2 years before I retired, I began to plan for what I'd be doing when I was no longer harnessed in a career. I realized that it would not be easy to step away from 50 years of routine, replacing it with a structure of my own design. After talking to my wife and pastor and some friends, and with a great deal of prayer, I began to form elements of a retirement plan. It began with learning to bake bread. Today is the 19th Sunday in Ordinary Time. This is the third of 4 Sundays in a row that focus our attention on the Bread of Life discourse. The readings call us again to the center of our faith, Jesus' gift of the Eucharist. Baking bread, flour, some water, a few other odds and ends. Mix them up, put it in the oven. It couldn't be that difficult. In the first reading, we hear a part of Elijah's journey. Elijah is fleeing for his life after encountering and destroying the prophets of Baal. He's fearful and weakened, and he begins to hesitate, begging for death rather than continuing on his journey toward God. God responds by sending an angel who brings Elijah bread and water to strengthen him and move him to action. I informed my wife of my plan to become a bread maker. She seemed amused. Then she offered me one of her recipes. She said it was easy and almost foolproof. She knew who she was dealing with. My first try was not encouraging. I must have left something out because the dough was like concrete, and the mixer became hot to the touch. I called my wife, and she switched off the mixer and suggested that I take a break while it cooled down. When I returned, the dough was in the trash. I was instructed to wash everything up. Now, undaunted by her apparent lack of faith, I decided to start over. In the second reading, Paul encourages the church in Ephesus to replace their bad habits of anger, bitterness, and malice with habits of kindness, forgiveness, and compassion. Paul writes, this conversion is necessary for life with Jesus. My second try was different than the first. This time there was no concrete. It was more like soup. I thought it was an improvement. My wife had a different opinion. Still, it was much easier to get it out of the mixing bowl and into the trash. In the gospel today, Jesus continues to teach the crowd concerning the nature of the true bread from heaven. Those who are listening become more skeptical, casting Jesus as the unremarkable local boy who everyone knows. Since they think they know Jesus, they fail to hear or understand that the reason they're listening to him now is because he is the one they're seeking, the Messiah, the Son of God. After some reflection on my first 2 attempts, I decided to make a third attempt. I was a bit apprehensive about it, and I was sure that it was some simple thing that I was missing. My wife asked if she could make a suggestion. Now, I imagine that she might tell me that I was out of my league. Maybe I should think about doing something I was capable of, like digging holes in the yard. Using my best husband smile, I agreed to hear her out. Why don't you start by following the recipe? That couldn't be the answer. Recentering ourselves on the Eucharist takes some effort on our part. However, we can approach it knowing elements of the recipe. Elijah's experience in the Old Testament lays the groundwork for us. We see God using bread as the element that overcomes fear. It supplies strength through nourishment and turns procrastination into action. It's all in the bread that God provides Elijah. Paul adds more information for us. We're to sort out and to discard the things that block God's efforts to connect with us. The angers we hold, the bitterness, the selfishness. Paul encourages us to keep our focus on Jesus, cleaning our souls of the things that keep Jesus out of our lives. Jesus tells the crowd and us that he is the bread come down from heaven, the bread that gives us life now and into eternity. He quotes from the same scripture that the crowd believes, and yet they push him away. My third attempt made it into the oven, a little too brown on top, some voids in the middle, maybe a little chewy, but it was edible, especially with butter. Now, my wife said, you practice. You learn how the dough feels. You watch how it rises. You understand that it is alive. My wife and I have not needed to buy bread for the last 10 years. I make it and bake it for us. It took time, patience, and practice, and following the recipe. The readings today offer us a recipe for our relationship with Jesus in the Eucharist. Jesus invites us to consume and savor it, receive it often, learn how it feels, sense how it raises you up, understand that it is alive. It's all part of a recipe made by God and offered to us. It is Jesus in the bread of life.